have a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tokimaru and I'm here to have a look at Disaster Arms Impact Project B.A.H.N. This is an arcade-style shoot-'em-up developed by a solo indie dev named PD_CGT. They previously developed several other arcade-style games. Now, I usually don't play, obviously. The advent of the arcade game is long since past, so I don't really play that many arcade games, even though I could probably emulate them at home. And it's not very common that you get these sort of more arcade, like specifically designed for an arcade experience style game at home. So it's really refreshing to see that there's someone dedicated to sort of bringing you the arcade experience at home. Now, I don't usually play these types of games. However, I did really find this quite enjoyable. It is a sort of bullet hell-ish side-scrolling shooter. Let me first start off by jumping into the options menu. It's quite good for what it is. I do think there are a few minor problems, though it's not too bad. As you can see, we have rebindable keys for both keyboard and controller. Additionally, we have an option to change button icons. I think there's a way to integrate this into Steam so you don't have to do it manually, but it is nice that it's there. I do think they should probably add the Nintendo layout because I believe this is only for Xbox A, B, X, and Y. I am playing this with an Xbox controller, and I would definitely recommend it because it feels much closer to the intended experience, and it ends up being a little bit more helpful with the way the controls work. Because some of the controls are definitely designed with an arcade sort of control stick in mind. I don't know if they have an option for fight stick compatibility, but I think that would be a cool additional option they could do because it would feel more authentic to the arcade-like experience. But I do think this game generally feels better with controller than it does keyboard. We have cutscene text speed. I think that the only thing I would say that's missing, because this is a 2D cartoony style of game, it doesn't require that many options in terms of graphical fidelity. I do think what is missing is, first of all, I feel like toggle full screen, they could simply implement this actually into the game as an option, instead of just saying, hey, press Alt-Enter. It's not too bad. It did sort of mess up with my recording equipment, but other than that, that's okay. They really should be an in-game ticker box, full screen on or off. Additionally, they could probably add the resolution options. But other than that, I think that the only real other thing they could add is maybe an additional slider for overall volume. Oh, actually, I do think it's possible. I know it ends up being a lot of work for a game like this. So, first of all the visuals in this game are hand-drawn. It's a really beautiful cartoony art style. I do think that there are a few issues in some stages with some objects not really standing out from the background, and I think that they might end up running into an issue where a colorblind player might have a lot of difficulty sort of discerning certain platforms and obstacles. But I know that type of thing ends up being a lot of work when it's all hand-drawn visuals like this. But I do think that's probably the only real big improvement they can make here. We have a couple languages. It's English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Japanese, which is nice. And because this is an arcade-style game, you can change your name. And oh my goodness, arcade games could never. This many characters. But yeah, because this game is an arcade style game, it's relatively short. I have about an hour and a half-ish of playtime in this game. Normally I play for like 2 or 3 hours for games for have a look at. But I felt like I got a pretty good grasp on this game with an hour and a half of gameplay. And additionally, from what I've seen, I believe I've gotten through about 75-ish% of the game. It's actually really fast. Let me... It's in start game. Okay. Before I go there, we do have a few more other menu options. You have their previous works. As you can see, there are a lot of sort of side-scroller, bullet hell type games. They primarily do these sort of arcade experiences, which are really nice. We have the leaderboard. As you know, it's an arcade game. We love score attack games, so that's pretty nice. I don't recall what extras is. I don't think I've managed to unlock any of these. This might be something that happens when you complete the game multiple times on different difficulties. I haven't seen yet. Now, I said I've had about an hour and a half of playtime on this game, and I've gotten about 75% of the way through it. Like I said, this is an arcade game experience. So the primary intended experience is that you're going to be running through it again and again and again, and you're trying to get a high score. That's like your main goal. I've been playing with arcade difficulty because I felt like that was the intended experience. I actually think that given some of the tools you have in this game, I think arcade difficulty might actually be too easy. And let me preface this by saying, the arcade difficulty doesn't give you any save points throughout the game, like it says there. You have a certain amount of lives, and when you run out, you have to restart the whole game from the start. And still, I found that pretty easy. I think I've only lost a run 2 or 3 times. I do think if you're experienced in platformer games, maybe not even necessarily bullet hells or arcade shooters, but like generally, if you're pretty experienced with platformer games, I do recommend you try impact mode because advanced mode feels a little bit too easy. Let's jump right into the game. So this game, let me skip through this. This game has a pretty overall simple story. You get a couple cutscenes in between levels. I guess we didn't get a cutscene to start. There was one when we loaded the game up. The story's pretty simple, and you'll see what I mean by that, and I'll talk more about what I think about it later. So, this is the game, Impact Project B.A.H.N, Disaster Arms. The art in this game is absolutely beautiful. I totally adore this art style. So you can see, sorry, I got distracted. So you can see we have just a couple simple shooting enemies. The projectiles actually get a lot more hectic later into the game. Obviously, this is just level 1, but it is a lot more bullet hell-like. I do think the actual like levels part of the game is a lot easier than the bosses, which I believe are the main experience of the game. This is mostly a boss rush type game, but for the most part, you're going to be running through these kind of short levels. They usually don't take more than a minute or two to get through, and all these enemies die in one hit. It's really easy. And one of the reasons I found it so easy, what are my controls again? Is because you get all of your abilities right at the start. So you can see here we have a straight shot, we have a burst shot, we have this, which is actually a homing shot. And the range on this is surprisingly long. And I think this is actually one of the things that makes this game feel a lot easier than it otherwise should, because it has a surprisingly long range, and it always homes in on the first enemy you see. And then finally we have this, which is sort of like a flamethrower type shot. Additionally, you can double tap or press... What was the other button? There's also a shortcut button. It's Y on the Xbox control scheme to do this sort of blast, which destroys projectiles. There are a couple of bosses in this game where it's designed so that they want you to use your punch blast to destroy the projectiles, because otherwise you're not actually going to get through it. Now, most of the game is running through here, collecting these. You're trying to get points. There's also this additional mechanic. I feel like there aren't that many levels where they make super great use of this, but there are a couple of really cleverly designed levels. Oh, I didn't even, you know what's funny? I don't even remember the timer being a thing in this game, because I feel like otherwise, I mean, the only reason it's, I'm almost at 0 now is because I've been doing nothing and talking to you this whole time. But I feel like otherwise, it's pretty easy to get through the level really, really quickly and beat the boss without ever having to worry about the timer. I don't think I've lost a single run to time. So I'm just gonna quickly go through this. I'm going to show you the general experience, and then you get to the boss. Oh, we might actually lose this because I was wasting time earlier. But yeah, it's a lot of sort of short, bite-sized experiences, of course, and then I lost because of time. That's the only time I've ever lost because of time in this game. I feel like either the timer is really generous, except I don't know if I would say that because it's 3 minutes, but the level size is pretty short. And even when we get later into the game with levels that are a little bit longer, they aren't that much longer. And I feel like I've never had to worry about time ever. So let's quickly get to the boss here. I believe this is good, right? Oops. Nice, and we're done. This is the type of game where you're probably gonna want to try to speed run. You're gonna want to try to figure out the... Oh. There we go. The optimal way to get through levels as fast as possible. Whoops. The optimal way to get through levels as fast as possible and with as many points as possible, because this is a score attack arcade game. But I feel like there isn't that much movement expression in this game to warrant the sort of time limit where it doesn't feel like there's that much you can do to optimize your movement through the level. It's mostly about fighting the bosses. There we go. It's mostly about fighting the bosses. And once you figure out their actual attack pattern, whoops, my bad. Once you figure out their attack pattern and are able to dodge their bullets pretty consistently, I feel like it's easy to not like run into time, or it feels like once you get used to it, you don't have that much opportunity to shave off that much time from your score, because like maybe you do it in a matter of 10-ish more seconds, but I feel like the game so far in arcade mode is easy enough where there's not that much you could do. Oh, it's this boss. I haven't been here in a long time. Let me get through here. But yeah, I do think the bosses in this game, so the levels, I think, aren't particularly interesting. That's my bad. I don't think the design of the levels is particularly complex. There aren't that many sort of interesting puzzles. The enemies usually aren't too strong. Whoops, that's my bad. I walked into it. The levels usually aren't too long. But I do find a lot of the bosses are really cool. There's some really cool boss design, and I feel like later bullet patterns get complex enough that it starts to take real skill to sort of get through it without taking damage. Because remember, this is an arcade game where if you die, you go all the way back to the beginning. So you want to optimize taking damage throughout each of the bosses. I'm doing a little bit more poorly than I would if I were doing it off stream, because I'm also trying to explain the game at the same time. But it does get really interesting, and you want to conserve a lot of your health, because otherwise you're gonna have to restart over from the beginning. So this is the story I was talking about. I had a little bit of a problem with the way the story is presented in this game. I do love these sort of comic book panel-esque graphics that they use for the cutscenes. One problem I have is sometimes it's difficult to tell who's talking because they don't give you names. They represent different characters with these sort of little... with these little emojis? I don't know what you would call them. Whoops, that's my bad. With like these little text faces. Okay. So sometimes you end up running into a cutscene where they're introducing like 3 or 4 characters. And it's difficult to tell who's actually talking in that cutscene until you get to a future cutscene where the characters, oh, I forgot how awesome this guy is. Whoops, I didn't mean to crouch there. Sorry. Oh boy. But yeah, it can be difficult to tell who's talking until you get to a future cutscene where they reuse a character and then you get to sort of learn their names. I'm sure that's intentional, but I feel like it's really easy to get confused at first glance. Additionally, during some of the cutscenes later on, they have flashbacks that happen before you meet characters and after you meet characters and after you beat a character. They might be reused in another flashback cutscene later on. So I think that is also a little bit confusing, especially because the cutscenes are also so short. So it's difficult to like get an actual chance to digest what is going on when it's intended to be placed in the timeline, who's talking, and what's even happening. But I don't think the story is... Oh goodness. The boss designs in this game are amazing, by the way. Not just like the overall fights, but I do think the graphics for the bosses are really sick. Please go over me. But yeah, the confusing cutscene problem is one that I have. Oh goodness. Let me get through this boss. But yeah, as you can see, even though I've been sort of half paying attention and taking a lot of damage, I think the game wants to be a pretty difficult experience, but I haven't had that much trouble getting through the whole game. Basically on my first 2 or 3 tries. And I think that's okay. I think that might be what they intend, but I do think if you're looking for a more difficult, hardcore, classic arcade difficulty experience where they were designed to take all of your money, it might be... Oh yes, I forgot about this. It might be more worth it to start on the harder difficulty rather than arcade difficulty. Even though you might think, well, arcade difficulty's gotta be really hard, right? Nice. Oh gosh. Well, there's my first step. I almost beat it. But yeah, that's basically how the game goes. You go through these really short levels, you fight a lot of really cool, well-designed bosses. There's some amazing ones later on where you fight actual, like, people that walk on the ground and fight you like they're actual people instead of giant robot bosses. But that's basically the entire flow of the game. I do think it's really good. I would recommend playing on higher difficulty. It's quite polished. The art style is beautiful. The music is amazing. Oh, I actually didn't let you listen to any of the in-game music. Here, I'll let you watch this opening cutscene and listen to the music that they use here because I do think it's quite good. So yes, that has been Disaster Arms, a delightful side-scroller arcade bullet hell shoot 'em up. Excellent throwback to the arcade days of yore. And it is $9.99 on Steam and itch.io. I have been Tokimaru. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.